No big chops. I really wanted all this to work.
And then he says, like, we're not crew no more.
But you and Q, you ain't crew no more.
He's like, you and Q, we're not crew. And I don't know if he was dropping bars on accident or on purpose.
I don't think Tupac knows how to not drop bars.
Tupac Shakur, he is one of the best rappers alive. Or no, sorry.
Whoa, are you about to just throw some conspiracy theories out here, James? Because I'm here for it.
No, I don't want to spin anything.
Riverside, mother.
Benny Noodle Gang, welcome back. It's another edition of Just Play It, where your boy, James, and the boy across from me,
Nick,
watch movies, break them down, review them, dive into movies we have never seen, dive into classics, you know the deal. Finally, I'm the one who has seen this movie a handful of times, and the gentleman across from me, Nick, has not seen this movie. Nick, which movie are we diving into this week?
we're diving into 1992's Juice. The Juice.
Well, it's not called the Juice.
Is it not the... It's just Juice, you're right.
It's just Juice.
It just referenced the juice so much, I just called it the Juice. I was like, it's the Juice.
Well, that's proof that Nick has not seen this movie. Give you some backstory on why I brought this to the table. Basically, you've seen a lot of movies.
I have, admittedly.
And I wanted to be on this side of the conversation where I remember watching a movie, for instance, this one back in high school a lot. For whatever reason, this movie came up in my friend group. I don't know if it's because we thought we were all hood and gangster and cool and sick with it, but we loved this movie. And now rewatching it as an adult is an interesting experience. And I was like, hey, I want to get Nick's opinion on this movie because this is a gangster movie from the 90s based in New York.
Yes.
It's not a gangster movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not really truly a gangster movie, but it is gang related.
I was telling you off air that this was kind of in the same timeline as when Boys in the Hood came out. This movie came out 6 months after and kind of trailblazed that whole subgenre of inner city drama, gang related crime movies.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was directed by Ernest Dickerson, who is a frequent collaborator with Spike Lee. He is the cinematographer on Spike Lee movies, famous for Do the Right Thing, Jungle Fever, Malcolm X, and even did the Public Enemy Fight the Power music video. And he's done a ton of TV episodic directing gigs. He directed 11 episodes of The Walking Dead, 4 of which were in season 2, which in my opinion, I think is a top 10 season of television of all time.
Wow.
So I probably loved his episodes that he directed.
I bet you did. I also saw he did 9 episodes of Dexter, which is definitely a little more out of the realm of the other things we've mentioned here. But he also did a handful of episodes of The Wire, which, if you're familiar with The Wire, is very similar to the style of Juice here.
Absolutely.
You know, very kind of grittier on the streets with a little more gang focused. So, very talented director.
And this movie stars Omar Epps, Tupac Shakur, Jermaine Hopkins, and Khalil Kain. So Tupac Shakur, he was one of the best rappers ever. And this is his first major acting role.
Yes.
Just to throw out a little fun fact real quick, I was watching a couple interviews with the director, and essentially he was auditioning rappers, and he was auditioning Tretch from Naughty by Nature, I think for the role of Q, which is Omar Epps' character. And there's a guy with him. Apparently he was getting pretty desperate, and he's like, what about you, man? Like, you want to read some lines? And then the guy's like, sure, I'll do it. And he reads some parts for Q. Ernest says, you did a pretty decent job. And then he gives him a script for Bishop. And apparently Ernest loved it. And this gentleman was Tupac, a 19-year-old Tupac.
If you're Ernest Dickerson, you got to feel really good about your casting. Like, I was able to identify a young star.
Superstar.
Yeah, phenom.
Because I think he was like a roadie and like a background singer for Digital Underground at the time.
That's exactly right.
That's an A+ right there.
And it can't go without saying, James, both of us being from the West Coast, we have a specific love for Tupac. He pioneered West Coast rap.
Dude, I was gonna bring this up. I was gonna bring this up later, but our boy Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
Are you aware about this?
No.
Dude, him and Tupac were like really good friends. If you walk up to him on the street and start talking shit about Tupac, he'll probably kill you. Like a real ride or die. They just got along really well. And he's a great human being. They actually did this movie together, which I believe we should just immediately add to our list. It's called Bullet. I don't think it has really good ratings, but it stars Mickey Rourke alongside Tupac.
That sounds right up my alley.
We're just adding more unofficial friends to the show.
Don't twist my arm to add more friends to the show.
Yeah, so apparently they were like best friends, which I find super endearing.
One more part of the movie crew I wanted to bring up was the music, because the music obviously is a huge part of this, having it be a 90s hip hop.
It's so good.
Centric. There's a lot of like DJing and whatnot. And a huge part of it was done by the Bomb Squad, who did a lot of work with Public Enemy. And actually Chuck D is a member of the Bomb Squad from Public Enemy. I love old hip hop crew names. They were so good. I miss it.
Oh yeah, when they were just known as like duos or trios or just full on squads.
Yeah. NWA, Bomb Squad,
Cypress Hill.
I mean, you could just keep going. House of Pain, like
they make Cypress Hill has a song in this movie, which
they do.
Back to this movie Juice. This had a budget of $5 million and went on to gross $20 million. So can I get a hell yeah?
Hell yeah. 4X return is a great return.
All right, Nick, let's read this log line here. 4 inner city teenagers get caught up in the pursuit of power and happiness, which they refer to as the juice. Maybe that's where you thought it was the juice.
I just had the juice all up in my head all day.
Not to be confused with O.J. Simpson.
Well, we will get into that. No, we won't. All right, James, what do you say? What do you say we start some plot talk?
Enter some plot talk here. Plot talk. First off, going back to the music, this opens up with Eric B. and Rakim's Know the Ledge, which is an absolute banger.
Big time banger.
I always called the song Juice. I think maybe officially it may be known as Know the Ledge. But man, I had this on my iPod video in high school because of this movie. Illegally downloaded it off LimeWire and put it on my iTunes. I love it.
This is not the last time we're going to refer to a song in this movie as a banger, but this kicks it off hot with a banger.
All these songs freaking slap. They bang. Over this music, we get montage sequence of Harlem. This is where this movie takes place. Shortly after this, we're introduced to our main crew, which is referred to as the crew or crew in this movie. It's almost like a fifth character, the crew entity.
Yes.
And it'll play an important role later. So in this crew is Quincy Q. Powell, who is Omar Epps. He's pretty much going to be our protagonist, even though we do focus on 4 characters. Roland Bishop, who is Tupac. Raheem Porter, who is Khalil Kane. And Eric Steele Thurman, played by Jermaine Hopkins. So there's a montage of them getting ready in the morning. They're late for their alarm. They got to go to school. Their parents are yelling at them.
They're high schoolers in this film.
I think Tupac and Omar were 19. I think Khalil was 26, but he looks like the youngest of the group, actually.
Absolutely.
And Jermaine probably was same deal, maybe like 20 something.
He may have been closer to like 17 because he was in Stand By Me, I think, when he was 14 and 89. So I think he actually was as young as he looked in the film.
I think you're right. While they're getting ready, I gotta say, there's so much 90s style in this.
Oh,
Omar, I think he has his little brother in the room, and he's trying on different sneakers. And Steele has settled on some red plaid overalls, a white and black striped shirt with a green plaid bucket hat, and a Payday candy bar.
He almost looked like a Fat Albert character.
I don't want to be mean, but he is supposed to be kind of like the chubby comic relief of the group.
Absolutely, yeah. That's not mean. That's clearly what his role was.
Omar Epps, Q, he also has a bucket hat, and it's a 49ers bucket hat. Nick, being a Bay Area sports fanatic, how tickled were you to see a lot of Bay Area sports hats and jackets in this movie?
There's a ton of them.
There was a lot.
Ton of them.
And I think it has to do with it taking place in 1992 because we were in a heyday of Niners and A's. I saw some Raiders jackets in there.
I mean, they were just big at the time. Also, I mean, this movie didn't really play into it, but it was always popular among gangs, just the red color, and then just kind of the Raiders attitude.
Yeah, because Raiders are degenerates.
Boom.
Roasted. We do see Bishop, Tupac's character. He does walk into a room where his dad is. He looks like he's in a coma, or he looks like a complete vegetable.
State,
I think.
Yeah.
It seems like he's going through some sort of PTSD. We don't know yet.
So that's actually interesting because it does seem almost like PTSD or like some sort of shell shock. And there's a point where where Bishop's mom is trying to tell him like, hey, you should go to this school to get a trade, but absolutely you're never joining the army. It's never really expanded on, but.
Coming up shortly, there's another very small hint that might let you in on what he went through.
Yes.
Later, I don't know if it was retroactively done by the director, but on an interview that I was watching, he does explain why he's like that, and you're like, I would have never picked that up.
Was it prison related?
It was prison related.
Okay, so I did catch that. Well, let's get to that scene because that's kind of coming up next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So the wrecking crew actually is their coin term for their squad of 4. They get together, they kind of harass each other, they bullshit with each other. I think Bishop's first scene out on the streets, he gets approached by this Puerto Rican gang and they're harassing him. I don't know why. I think it's just because gang's gonna gang. They're just gonna be a-holes. Something else probably going on in their own life, but they just harass Bishop. And they're just kind of jawing at each other, real kind of macho BS.
Well, Bishop's an instigator as well.
He's not a good reactor, that's for sure.
No, he definitely eggs it on a ton.
He doesn't diffuse the situation. They're harassing him. They basically almost get into a fight. Bishop sees Q and Raheem walking up, and then he gets kind of the nerve to talk smack back to this Puerto Rican gang.
He's got his backup with him.
Yeah, so then this is where the crew mentality comes in, the crew character. So he all of a sudden it unleashes Bishop in this like big macho man, like, yeah, well, you know what? You're a punk. And he starts saying all these racial slurs. What's funny here is when I said the guy Tretch from Naughty by Nature auditioned, so he made it into the movie. He got thrown into this Puerto Rican gang, but it's funny because he's like the one black guy. He was a black guy in the Raiders jacket. Okay. Amongst all these Puerto Ricans. So they did put him in the movie.
I was trying to figure it out because I actually did look at that. I'm like, is this like a multi-ethnic gang?
They really make it a point to kind of make it a little bit about race because they do
There's
say
some racial
they're a Puerto
slurs
Rican
going
gang.
back and forth.
Bishop definitely, says racist stuff to them. But then you're like, who's this black guy back there in the Raiders jacket? So that's Tretch from Naughty by Nature. I don't think he had a speaking part. I think he just kind of got thrown in there. So good for you, Tretch. So they're jawing at each other. And this is where you may have picked up on a hint. Radames. Radames is the leader of the Puerto Rican gang. He talks shit to Bishop about his dad. And basically he's like, yeah, he enjoys being passed around like a prison hoe.
Yeah.
So I just took that as an insult. But later on, the director confirmed it and said, yeah, he is suffering from PTSD from prison rape, essentially.
Oh, I feel like that could have been a much bigger storyline.
Oh, absolutely.
If it was explained more, but okay.
I'll bring this up after. I just wonder if the studio had something to do with that.
Good, yeah.
So that is our reason after the fact of why Bishop's dad looks like he's in such a daze and going through PTSD at home, because that's the only scene that he's in. He says no lines. He's just staring at the TV.
Bishop never even talks to him. He just kind of stares at him.
He just slips money into his pocket.
Yeah.
Probably money that he lifted from somewhere or stole, because they do get into thievery.
Crime.
They get into a little petty crime. They dabble in petty crime.
We get that glimpse into their life. There's harassed by the Puerto Rican gang in Radames, and they kind of fight and scuffle, and insults are flying back and forth. They're eventually chased off by a convenience store owner with a gun, and they all flee laughing, right? Like, I'm not going to say they enjoy this life, but they've made the most of it. Like, they're very comfortable in it, and it's not too high stress a situation for them. Later on, they're at an arcade. It's actually run by Samuel L. Jackson.
I forgot he was in this. Dude's everywhere.
That's kind of their home base, is this arcade. And at a certain point, the cops come, and obviously these kids are out of school. They're truant. There's a chase scene. Really, there's this whole setting the scene for us, kind of these kids' lives. And, they don't go to school. They're kind of street smart. They kind of get into trouble. This is how they are. We start learning about these characters. So one thing about Q, Omar Epps' character, is that he doesn't leave people behind. He's probably has the highest character of anybody in the Wrecking Crew. So we kind of start to gravitate towards him as our favorite character, as our protagonist.
Because Bishop gets caught up on the fence when they're getting chased by the cops, and he says, Q, come back. And then Q comes back and helps him out.
Those are some athletic-ass cops, too. Can we mention that? The way they were scaling fences, and I was impressed.
At one point, they were like 30 yards behind, and then when they cut inside the building, they're literally on their ass in the stairwell.
Yeah.
But they can't make that roof-to-rooftop jump. Weak.
I like roof-to-rooftop jumps in movies because they'll like show it and you're like, wow, that's like 13 feet. And then they like do the shot from like up the alley and you're like, oh, it's 5 feet. This building's significantly taller than this one. Like, I am not my athletic prime by any means. And I'm like, I could make that jump for sure.
Well, maybe it's a POV when they do it, the reveal, and it's like inside the person's mind, thinking like, oh, that's a big jump. And then when they back out to the wide shot, it's like, no, this is the reality. It's just 6 feet.
Yeah. It reminds me.
I'll give rooftop jumps the benefit of the doubt there.
Oh, I just think it's funny because obviously you can't risk it, on a $5 million budget. You're actually probably doing that stunt and you can't risk somebody's life doing a jump more than 5 feet.
No.
The way those cops scaled the chain link fence, they could make that jump.
You know what? I won't doubt them. I think they could do it.
Yeah.
Steele actually gets caught by the police at the arcade. And I was wondering why the cops were nailing all these kids for just being at an arcade. Like, do they really take hooky that seriously?
I can't speak to the early 90s.
Because I was like, why are they like being pursued by cops? They're just at the arcade. Maybe they don't like hooky in Harlem.
Truancy is one of those things where, like, in today's world, a cop would just be like, hey, we're going to talk to your parents and we're going to go from there, which is probably a more sound strategy than chasing young kids to jump over rooftops. But
I'm not New York PD, so there's that.
Yeah.
So he does get caught by the cops, and I think basically they drag him to school. Q, Raheem, and Bishop are waiting for Steele to get out of school because they made it away from the arcade. Steele got caught up playing the video game.
Yeah, he just never turned around.
It was funny because he was playing Bishop in maybe Street Fighter, and he was like still fighting Bishop's character when Bishop obviously was AFK, and he like seemed like he was still struggling to beat Bishop's character.
He was trying.
How trash at Street Fighter are you, Steele?
Apparently he was good because he was hustling people for money at the arcade. But
that is another way they make money. So, and then another thing that kind of foreshadows Q's trajectory and Bishop's, when they're waiting for Steele outside the school, Bishop really is getting impatient and kind of wants to go and just say like, forget Steele, leave him behind. And Q's like, no, man, we'll wait. And Raheem's like, yeah, we'll wait. So that kind of is a little bit of a soft foreshadowing of where these routes are going within the Wrecking Crew.
So eventually they're back at Steele's apartment, not his apartment, his parents' apartment. And they're watching this old movie. James, I see on our notes you have it highlighted. Do you know which movie this is?
This is a movie called White Heat from 1949. A couple scenes in this movie really activate Bishop. Mm-hmm. James Cagney plays a character. He's the main character in this. And this movie is about a psychopathic criminal with a mother complex that makes a daring break from prison and leads his old gang into a chemical plant payroll heist. In this scene, it looks like he's in prison and he starts beating up these prison guards. And Bishop is all about it. He's getting amped. He's getting amped up about it. He loves seeing authority figures get punched out. Later in the movie, James Cagney's character goes out in a blaze of fire. And Bishop makes comments about how great that would be. Like, to go out on your own terms.
If you gotta go out, that's how you go out. That motherfucker took his destiny in his own hands.
Some destiny.
What you know about it, Big Chops? What you ever control? I got more control over your life than you do.
How you figure that?
I'm letting you breathe, ain't I?
I just thought it was funny that these 4 teenagers were really into this like old ass black and white movie.
Yeah, well, more so, yeah, very much Bishop. It was, yeah, very much like you said, go out in a blaze of glory, kind of.
He was like the only one watching.
He was the only one paying attention, really, to the movie.
Yeah.
He ends up basically saying, like, the only way, like, I'm tired of running. Like, I want to fight back. And if I die fighting back, and he mentions, getting chased off by the convenience store owner with a gun, by getting chased by the cops, by getting punked by the Puerto Rican gang. He's like, I'd rather stand up and die than
be a man.
Yeah. And this is definitely goes back to pretty much like what triggered him, what was said about his dad, right? Like he never wants to be that way. He needs to be the man of the house, the man of the crew. And he wants to lead his soldiers into battle.
And before this scene, they're walking by. They actually went to a record store and they lifted some records from the store.
Mm-hmm.
Q was talking up the cashier as a distraction while the other 3 were just kind of stuffing records in a newspaper for his DJ competition.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after this, with the hustler money, Raheem sends Q into a store or like a bar or a restaurant to go get cigarettes, and he runs into, I think, what is just another guy from the same neighborhood. And he's like, oh, snap. Like, what's up, man? And it's a guy who's on parole. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm like just chilling. Yeah. And then Q is like, oh, you taking care of yourself? He's like, yeah, man, just got on parole. He's like, that's good, man. That's good. And then the guy's like, all right, hold up real quick. I'm about to rob this place. And then whips out a shotgun. It's like, everybody on the ground.
All right, everybody, put your hands in the air.
Well, he asked Q, like, you want in on this? Q's like, what?
Hey, yo, Q, you want a piece of this? Nah, man, I'm all right.
He's like, no, I'm good. And he walks out and explains, his name's Blizzard. He's like, Blizzard's in the joint, sticking it up right now. The crew says that he let you go. And he's like, oh, he wanted me to join in on the action. And Bishop was like, and you didn't?
And you said no? Oh, yeah, I said no, man. What is you crazy? Yo, I don't think so. Let me tell you something right now. That crazy motherfucker's going down, and I'm making for goddamn sure that none of us is going with him. Man, you know how much money is in there? Check there. We are in there, man. Let's just go. I said no, man.
So we're, again, foreshadowing Bishop's ambitions and Q's character from this scene, and then later on this white heat scene.
Yeah, and in the apartment,
they get into an altercation. Yeah,
in the apartment, Q basically tells them they hear either on the radio or on the news that Blizzard died in a shootout with the cops. Bishop says, "Oh, that wouldn't have happened if we were there," and Q says, "If we were there, there'd be 5 people dead instead of just Blizzard." And yeah, this sparks an altercation where Bishop basically tells him he's weak, he's kind of a bitch, and he's already dead, right? Because you're not living, like you need to be living, and you can see the craziness in Bishop's eyes at this point, and
you can see the wrong ambition.
Yeah, like to prove himself, he's going to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes is kind of the only way he knows how to handle problems, which is through confrontation. But eventually, they do squash the beef, thanks to Raheem kind of settling down tensions. But
he says, "You are brothers,
Bishop. I want you and Q to settle this shit right now. You're like brothers. Fuck that. You are brothers."
And then they hug it out.
But the tension remains. Remains.
Begrudgingly hug it out.
Yeah, it's very...
Yeah, Q is not about trying to get involved in a life of crime. He has bigger and better things to look forward to. He wants to be a DJ. That's why he's interested in joining this DJ competition. We actually do see there's a big poster of Malcolm X behind his turntables at his home.
Yeah.
I don't think that was planned, but it may have been a little foreshadowing of Spike Lee's Malcolm X movie, which Ernest was a cinematographer on, like we stated.
Yep.
He goes to the DJ audition, but the audition is essentially playing a cassette tape that he already recorded for Queen Latifah, who is...
Yeah, it's Queen Latifah's cameo.
Yeah, Queen Latifah plays like the MC or the host or the manager of this club that the DJ, I believe, is offering like a 6-month contract to DJ at.
Yep.
And the audition is pretty much like, here's my tape, and I'll watch you listen to it. And she's digging it.
Yeah, she's grooving. She's bopping to it.
He gets entered into the competition.
And he's really excited about it, but no one else in the crew is really, I guess, believes in him that this is, Q sees this as his way out of this lifestyle and kind of poverty and whatnot. And no one else in the crew is really buying it. They call him a local DJ a lot. And Q obviously has bigger ambitions.
At some point, I forgot when the gun is introduced.
So this next scene here.
Okay. It's like a big deal because someone's like, yo, look what I got.
So Bishop basically says, hey, like, we need to stop messing around here. And he has a gun and he's like, we're going to rob that convenience store. So the convenience store owner who chased them off with a gun earlier, it's that convenience store. Q, unfortunately, kind of gives into the pressure, but his big concern is that tomorrow night is the night of the in-person DJ competition. And Bishop sees this as like the perfect alibi. Like, good, you'll do your set, then we'll run off, rob this joint, and then be back. And we're starting to see Bishop as a schemer, too. He's not just some crazed lunatic who's trying to now kind of go after the juice, which is right, the power and the fame and the...
Yeah, and so they throw out this term juice all throughout this movie, obviously, mostly in the beginning, the end. And just from a surface standpoint, you kind of understand it just means power. You got the stuff.
Influence.
Like, no one's gonna mess with you. Yeah, you got status, street cred. That's the juice.
That's the juice.
People be chasing that juice.
So Q is not super down with it, but he's part of the wrecking crew, right? And so kind of in his mantra of don't leave a man behind, he's part of the crew. And if this is what the crew's doing, he's not going to not be a part of it. But he does go to the DJ competition, and it's just sweet. It's early 90s, like scratching records.
So I want to talk about this, because how does the DJ competition work? Because it seems like they go back and forth like dueling pianos. Yeah. But like there's not like a timer. It's just kind of like all on the beat. So like the competitor kind of allows the other competitor to go when it's time.
It's kind of like a freestyle competition, right? You just kind of feel it out and you battle back and forth and you kind of answer each other as you go.
Because like with a rap battle, like an 8 Mile, obviously everyone has like a timed beat to rap over, and one person goes and the other person goes. This is just like really fluid, like record scratching. I wish I could go to one of these.
I think it's just a musical thing, because you'll see guys, guitar players who play solos together, and they just know when that guy wraps up, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go. And then the drummer's like, as soon as he's up, I'm hitting my drum solo. And you're like, I guess that's just a musical talent you have to know when to count yourself in and go. But it's a super cool scene. It's awesome to see that old school turntable work.
Fab Five Freddy from Yo MTV Raps. He makes a cameo here.
A lot of cameos in this one. It's fun.
Q kills it. Kills the set. He's moving on.
Takes down the defending champ, who was like a big deal.
Yeah. He's riding high on this moment.
But he can't enjoy it.
He walks down into the crowd. He's getting praise from the crowd. He's smiling. He's in his element. And then the camera waltzes on up to the wrecking crew.
The crowd parts like the Red Sea.
And the wrecking crew is got straight faces on. They know it's go time, and they're waiting for Q to go commit this robbery. So Q is immediately brought back down to, I'm back in this shit again.
At no point did they congratulate him like, damn, dude, you killed it. Nothing. It's just like, okay, cool, you're done now. Let's go commit some felonies.
Rude. So they go to that store where the store owner initially chased them off with a gun when the Puerto Rican gang was beefing on Bishop. Guy says, hey, we're closed. And they reveal they got a gun. They're masked up, obviously. They stick them up. And Steele says something, and I'll bring it up in this next scene later, and as to maybe why, to explain what happens here. But Nick, what goes down during this robbery?
So they tell the store owner to turn around, hands up, face the wall. And for all intents and purposes, the robbery goes about as planned, right? They get the money. The store owner doesn't make a move. The cops do roll by at one point. They try to time it between shifts, the police officer shifts, but they don't get caught. They Everything works. And as they're leaving, Bishop keeps the gun lingering on the convenience store owner, and then for no reason at all shoots him in the back of the head. Rightfully so. Everybody freaks out and they run and they finally get to a safe spot. And this is a great scene here because everybody's freaking out, and not Bishop. Bishop's not really freaking out, but
because Raheem's like, yo, what the hell are you doing? And Bishop's like reacting again, not great.
Well, he's like trying to excuse it, right? He's like, oh, did you see? You saw him make a move, right? And they're like, what are you talking about?
So this is what he said. So he says like, oh, he knew who we were after you said his name, because Steele says, hey, Raheem, but it's very hard to hear. Mm-hmm. And it's really more like, hey, and then like as soon as like that happens, Raheem says, shut the F up.
Yeah. I
think that was like the reason, because it did seem like super unnecessary. What is super unnecessary is what happens next. So Raheem gets into a physical altercation.
So he wants to take the gun from Bishop. Like, we need to get rid of it. Give me that gun.
And then Bishop shoots Raheem. And then now the crew is shook because they're like, oh, we're doing friend on friend killing now.
Yeah. You can see Bishop is, after he took the convenience store owner's life.
He's also shocked.
He's shocked. You could tell he likes killing. Like, he's just like, okay, this is like, he feels powerful with it. And I think, he does try to excuse shooting the convenience store owner because he thought, he said a name out loud and he'd recognize him. But really, I think what we'll see with the rest of the movie is he feels like he needs to exact justice on people who didn't respect him. So like he called out the convenience store owner as someone he ran from when they were arguing at the apartment in the white heat scene. And so in my mind, I'm saying, okay, this is his vengeance, right? He goes, oh, you had power over me because you had a gun earlier. Well, now I'm going to exact my power over you. I have the juice.
He's got the juice.
It has the juice.
And he's very thirsty for it.
For lack of the better words.
Yeah.
They go back to the DJ competition, and I think
wait. I'd like to throw one more part in here. So he shoots Raheem, and they flee to another building, and they're freaking out. And Q says, man, you're acting crazy. And Bishop takes the gun and puts it right to Q's head.
He snaps halfway through this movie.
Bishop's gone. He tries to pat Steele on the shoulder, and Steele like recoils away from him.
Very, very creepy. Kind of like, it's okay, Steele. I'm here for you. I'm not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
So in my notes, I wrote, Q, never call the crazy man with a gun crazy.
You need to de-escalate.
Yeah.
De-escalate.
It's like, you're acting crazy, man. It's like, I'll show you crazy. It's
like,
oh no.
Crazy? So then they go back to the DJ competition. Shortly after, NYPD detectives pull up and they go like, Raheem's dead. Q does not have a good poker face. He does not look surprised. He's just like, oh shit. They all end up getting interrogated. None of them break.
There's a couple different tactics we see there. So first off, at the DJ scene, Bishop is the one who comes up to Q, and I think it's a POV shot, and he's like, hey, someone shot Raheem. They want to talk to us downtown. And he's like, stone cold. I didn't just kill this guy.
Psychopath.
First introduction to Bishop being a creepy psychopath. Sociopath, actually.
Big time.
So in the interrogation scene, they sense Steele is scared and feel like he can kind of slip up. So they kind of dog him a little bit on the questions. But then they also kind of
physically get up in his grill.
Yeah, so they get up on him like real aggressive, like, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't tell us what we want. And then later they're like, oh man, we'll take care of you. We'll protect you. Just tell us who shot the store owner, who shot
Steele's
Raheem.
Already an emotional mess. He's crying.
Steele's crying. Q is kind of playing it straight. Bishop, so they make bluffs towards Bishop trying to play him, but then he's playing the same game. He's trying to play them and say like, you know what? I think it was Radamez who would have had it out for Raheem. That makes sense. He's already trying to play some 3D chess here.
Scheming.
He's a schemer, dude. He's like, yeah, I think it was the Rapido Muerte. That's the name of the gang. Who killed Raheem and the store owner. And yeah, Q is just playing it straight like, I don't know.
What are you nervous about?
Because we're three niggas in a police station. Doesn't matter what happened. If y'all want us to be guilty, we'll be guilty. If you didn't do nothing, then you got nothing to worry about.
So Q's not having a good time.
I mean, he watched his best friend get shot by his other friend. He won his DJ battle. Like, this should be a really exciting moment for him. Like, he's taking a step towards his dream.
He won that first round, but when it goes back, the mood has definitely been killed. Because you'll see later, he gets a consolation prize. It's like a small boombox, as opposed to like, I guess like a super sick big ass one that was like apparently going to be customized.
Q and Steele are definitely like, this guy's not good. And this really comes to a head at Raheem's funeral.
Oh my gosh, this was a good scene.
This is a great scene.
They're all comforting Raheem's family. Steele and Q are obviously broken up. Raheem's mom and sister, I believe, are really broken up about it. Bishop, he has the audacity to comfort Raheem's mother and say like what a good friend Raheem was, and he's like, nah, he was like a brother to me.
I mean, personally for me though, Raheem was like my brother. I mean, he was more than a brother. I mean, we did everything together, just kicking it every day. If there's anything I can do, just let me know.
This guy sucks. Like
he goes, I'm going to do whatever I can to find his killer. You're like, whoa, dude.
And then he hugs her, and then he gives a very menacing stare down to Q, like, you see how good of an actor I am? You see this, Q?
Like, you want to fuck with me?
I'll kill you. I was like, oh, this has turned into a thriller now.
Yeah, this is a psycho
Bishop's
thriller.
A predator. He is a stalker predator now.
Q and Steele at this point are just trying to avoid Bishop. He does eventually find and confront them.
Real quick. So they're avoiding him at their home life and at school. And did you clock another cameo?
I want to bring that up. It's Donald Faison is a student at the school. He has one line.
Turkleton.
Dr. Turkleton.
I'm like, dude, if I know one voice, it's Donald Faison's.
It's barely like a side profile and like maybe like 1-2 seconds of his face.
I was kind of looking at my phone during the scene and I heard the voice. And at that point, you can't even really call it a cameo because, I mean, I'm sure that's just...
No, it's
Donald
not a cameo. It was just an early acting
job he's a nobody at that point.
It's a cameo to us, damn it.
Absolutely.
It's a cameo to us. I saw him at the Glendale Shake Shack one time.
He seems like a good dude.
It was great. I think his kid, like, dropped some water, and then he was, like, all embarrassed. He's like, oh, man, I'm Donald Faison in a Shake Shack, and now my kid made a mess. Like, everyone's looking at me now.
I would have went and cleaned it up and like, got it, Turk. Don't worry.
I got you, Turk. Don't worry, dog.
Yeah. Fun fact about Donald Faison that nobody asked for: gigantic Star Wars nerd, massive Star Wars.
Oh, we should invite him on the pod.
We should. He actually, like, during COVID made stop motion animation Star Wars short films.
I love that.
Yeah. Anyway,
I had to clock that in the notes.
Yeah, I was just about to bring it up. I was like, "There's no way I missed it."
And then actually at this scene, this is where we get another kind of jump scare from Bishop.
Yeah.
It's a classic horror movie trope of, it's not quite the mirror cabinet at the house where the mirror opens and then you close the mirror and the killer's behind you. This one, it's a pan shot. It shows Q at his locker and nobody's next to the locker. And then by the time it pans to where the locker door is blocking the background, Q shuts it, and then Bishop's there, and you're like, "Oh my god!"
Just snuck up,
Jesus, man! And this is a meme that if kids don't know where this meme is from, this is where the meme's from.
This is what it is. Fun fact: this is not fun or even a fact, really, but this is the first time these high schoolers are in the school. Like, this is the only scene where the high schoolers are in the school. So I thought it was funny. Q is avoiding Bishop by going to school. He's like, this is a safe place, school.
Which they have been avoiding since the beginning of the movie.
How did you not see him come up? This guy's creepy.
Stealthy. I always want to see like the wide shot of those. Like, just see Bishop like up against the locker, like scooting up all comically.
He's not like he's wearing like sneakers. He's wearing boots the whole
New York
time. Yeah.
And this scene is great as well. This might be one of my favorite scenes. Bishop here, Q's like, "You're crazy, man." And Bishop's like, "You know what? The first time you said that, I was kind of tripping, right? But now, I am crazy."
But you know what else? I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about you. I don't give a fuck about Steele. And I don't give a fuck about Raheem either. I don't give a fuck about myself.
And as soon as he says that, I was like, this guy's unhinged. Do not engage. Stay away from Bishop.
Under no circumstances should you be next to Bishop.
Obviously, this guy has no regard. He does not care if he lives or dies.
Yeah, we go back to that white heat moment in the apartment where the most noble thing he thinks he can do is go out in a blaze of glory. Doesn't even need a cause to do so. Just go out standing like a man, and if you die.
And speaking of going out like a man, he decides to 1v1. And by one, I mean a gang of Puerto Ricans and Tretch from Naughty by Nature.
It's never just one Puerto Rican.
Rapido Muerte gang plus Tretch. And they dog Bishop again on the streets. And this parallels the beginning scene. He sees Q and Steel in the background. And then he gets a little ballsy again. But Q and Steel are like, nope, crew has just been disbanded. We are not going to help you out. Good luck with that. And Steele's like, do you think he saw us? And it's like, yeah, obviously he saw you.
Yeah.
You're in plain sight.
Stared right at you guys as you walked away.
And then after this confrontation, the cops show up. Bishop's about to reach for the gun, which is in his ankle.
Mm-hmm.
So then the cops break it up and everyone scatters. And he chases down Radames down an alleyway and then shoots this guy twice.
5 times.
And says the line, Riverside, motherfucker.
Riverside, motherfucker.
And I say that every time. Every time we record. We record on Riverside. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, Riverside, motherfucker.
So yeah, I actually counted it because he shoots 4 times or 5 times. He shoots him twice and then 3 times on the ground. Because I was like, my biggest thing with movies, like in a revolver, if you've got 7 shots off in a revolver, I call bullshit. But I was like, okay, 5 shots in a revolver. That works.
Bishop's going, he's popping off.
Yeah,
not in a good way.
He is a problem. Q's is like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I have to go get a gun for myself to protect myself. So he goes and to like this back alley lady. I forget her name in the film.
Sweets.
And it's just this like middle-aged lady. And she ends up giving Q a gun. And there's actually a moment that's never explained and basically says, oh, are you Lorraine Powell's kid? He goes, yeah. And she goes, say hi to your mom for me. You're like, okay, so Q's mom is kind of involved with maybe something. I don't know. Never brought up again.
Honestly, Q's mom probably went through the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like she just felt the need to protect herself and had to track down this lady and get a gun because of her situation, because of the environment she's in, because of not expanded upon. But he does get this chode looking gun. It's not a lot because he's like, oh, I have $25. She's like, you can't get a slingshot for that, man. And then gives him the gun as like a donation. But it is like the smallest gun you've ever seen.
It's extremely small. In the meantime, Bishop goes ahead and finds Steel. He's like, hey, man, like, what's going on? And Steele's just like, I don't, he's just blubbering. He's frightened, as he should be.
Steele's like a hostage at this point.
Steel calls Q and he's like, hey, I'm scared. Like, you need to come find me. Bishop overhears this, brings Steel out to the back alley behind the arcade.
Well, first he's like, who the hell's that? And then he hops on the phone. And another great horror movie thriller trope we see is the silent killer and the silent scared victim on each end of the line. They don't know who's who. And it's just like, man, this really turned into a noir street thriller.
Honestly, it was stressful.
Yeah, I was like, Bishop's scaring me.
But yeah, Bishop shoots Steel. And at that point, that's when you know it's gone. Because Steel wouldn't harm anybody, right? Steel is...
he's gone complete sociopath because he's like, no one man's above the crew. If one goes down, we all goes down. But then he's like, I don't give a F about anyone.
See? That's what it's all about. See how scared you are?
Don't you get tired of this shit? What the fuck you want from me?
Nothing.
Bishop, he, again, is showing some sociopathic tendencies because he starts talking to Sam Jackson's character, who I believe is Trip or Trips, and he's trying to spin it like Q is the crazy one. And it's really creepy because he's explaining essentially the exact phenomenon that Q is experiencing with Bishop. He's like, I don't know what's going on with Q. He's acting all nuts. When I talk to him, it's like he's not even there. And he's really expressing it with what would appear to be genuine concern, but it's not, because it's a fabricated lie.
Yeah, he's like, I think he's unhinged. Like he might kill Steele.
It's so scary because he's hyper aware of his situation and how he's affecting his friends.
Yeah, he's not just crazy. Like you said, he's very aware of what he's doing and how it's perceived. And again, with Steele, you see it similar to all his victims. It's really anybody who he feels is challenging his authority, right? Convenience store owner, Puerto Rican gang leader, even Raheem when he tried to take the gun away from him. You know, if you challenge his authority, he's going to kill you, right? That's the only way he knows how to do this. So Q, he got the call from Steele, so he's like, I have to go help my boy. Goes to the arcade, can't find Steele, can't find Bishop, and so he keeps walking. In the meantime, we see Steele gets up from his heap, bleeding. We see his bloody hand kind of like walking across, holding the fence. He lives, and he gets put into an ambulance. Q sees this.
And there's like a crowd surrounding it. Q walks up on it and is shocked. And then you see some murmurs in the background because Bishop has been spinning these rumors that Q is the psychotic killer run around these streets.
And then where do you go to contemplate what everything's happening? On a bridge.
Hell yeah.
So he finds himself on a bridge. He looks at the gun. Well, on his way to the bridge, a homeless guy in an alley frightens him and he pulls the gun on the guy. And the guy's like, please don't shoot me. Please don't shoot me. And Q basically realizes like this isn't who he is.
He's scared from just getting jump scared like we are.
So he takes his gun when he's on the bridge, throws it into the river.
Yeah, and he snaps at his lady friend, his side piece or his main piece.
And gets kicked out of
when she walks into a room, he's like, "What? Don't do that! Don't scare me." Yeah. We'll talk about that later, the relationship.
Yes,
but it's not really important to the story.
No.
So yeah, he's at the bridge.
And Bishop shows up. Bishop knows where he's at. He's stalking.
And another great horror movie shot of Bishop coming into the light in the background.
Wait. We gotta talk about beforehand when Q is getting chased from that scene. Bishop is watching him from the rooftops.
Oh yeah.
He's like, my master plan is working. You're like,
like a villain.
Shit, dude. Yeah, he's like sitting there like watching it all unfold. He's watching Q like run into the alleys, and you're like, dude, did no one look up and see like Black Batman up there on the edge of the building, like watching over all of this?
I thought he was acting on impulse, but at this point, it seems like he's planning it out.
Again, this went from like, oh, he snapped to like, no, this is kind of who this dude's always been.
He is Gotham's worst nightmare now.
You don't just flip overnight and become like a cold, calculated mastermind.
So Q throws a gun away. He throws it in a river.
He throws his gun away. Yeah.
Right.
And Bishop shows up and puts a gun to Q's head. And Q, with some fast reactions, knocks the gun out of Bishop's hand. And they start getting into a tussle on the ground. And then a big chase ensues. Q runs into this large party, like warehouse.
I think he just runs into an apartment building. There's like a bunch of people going up in an elevator, I think, to a house party. And it's great because it's, again, another tense thriller scene where Q's at the back of the elevator, kind of panting, and there's a whole group of innocent people in between them. And Bishop does the hand thing and catches the elevator and then walks in. And then he's just staring at Q like a villain. And then Q is like, what you gonna do, shoot me? And Bishop's like, fucking damn right. Pulls out the gun. And then the whole crowd obviously is like, let's get this gun away from this crazy guy.
Yeah.
Now there's a guy that picks up the gun and pockets it. I want to know what happens after that. We'll bring that up later.
We'll go over that.
But Bishop, with no big macho man weapon, he takes off, and Q then starts to pursue him and kind of follows him into a house party. At this scene, this is where, again, going back to the music, we hear Cypress Hill's How I Could Just Kill a Man.
Yeah.
Now, if you ever played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and listened to radio's Los Santos, like how you should be playing that game, this song was on all the time. Essentially, the lyrics are just like how I could just kill a man, kind of putting it so frank and blunt, like I could just kill somebody, just like Bishop's been doing this whole time.
There's a verse where a guy breaks into his home and, breaking my home, you catch my chrome. then get it to the dome. I think that's pretty much the line.
Of course.
If you're a fan of the song, they do a rendition with Rage Against the Machine, and it goes hard. Tom Morello just shreds it. If you're a fan of the song, listen to the rendition with Rage Against the Machine. But they end up where all good final scenes end up, on a rooftop.
Love rooftops.
And it's a pretty good fight scene as far as like an early 90s. It wasn't cheesy. These guys are just going at it, wailing on each other. You know how like sometimes fight scenes, you're watching them, like, okay, you just got done with a big chase, running upstairs, your adrenaline's going, like you should be out of breath, but then guys will get on the top of a roof and they'll have this like 3-minute fight. Fighting for 3 minutes would like put you in cardiac arrest if you're not like a trained boxer. But this scene did a really good job of like, they were both tired and they're both just kind of wailing on each other. I thought it was like, as far as, I don't want to call myself like a fight scene connoisseur, but I love me some action flicks. And I love when a fight scene, I can believe like, okay, this would play out this way.
Pretty authentic. Bishop ends up, I think, kind of getting, I don't know, maybe clotheslined. And then he kind of flips over the ledge and is hanging on the roof. And then Q catches him. And Bishop's begging, like, snaps out of it. Like
don't let me
up.
go. Don't let me go.
Q is like, I don't want to let you go. I want to pull you up and save you. Unfortunately, we just kind of get the old, like, I'm losing my grip. I can't hold you. And
You're
then
sweaty from running up those stairs and through a party.
And from almost getting shot. So I get it, man.
Yeah. And Q did get shot, right? He got winged.
Yeah, Q does get shot. And he runs up, he runs away, gets into a fist fight, and he's still shot in the arm.
Yeah, and he's trying to save him with the arm. I
think he got shot in the left arm, and I believe he was hanging on with his right.
But still, he's in shock.
No, the adrenaline's pumping. Bishop falls, and we can only assume to his death. It's never confirmed, actually. Q walks away, shocked, but probably somewhat relieved that this problem has now been solved.
A lot of mixed emotions.
And a lot of the partygoers randomly followed him up there, and they're kind of gathered around the roof access door.
So there's this guy in the crowd, and the crowd is parting for Q as he's walking away towards the door. And this guy looks at him and goes, "Yo, you got the juice now, man." And Q just kind of turns and looks at him and shakes his head. The movie ends.
He's like, "I don't want the juice, bitch."
Yeah, the juice wasn't worth it. Like, So that wraps up plot talk. I did want to bring up, there was an alternative ending.
I will bring this up in my talking points. But before we get into our talking points, let's get into some nitpicks if you do have any. Nitpicks!
Yeah, I just have one. Q has this lady, this love interest, who we assume is married.
Because she's like with this old ass looking balding guy who is like obviously such a nerd.
Who's a dick.
Stick up his butt.
Yeah, so they meet him, he leaves, and then they get to banging, and this is his love interest. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is a high school kid. And this lady is like, owns her own place, is established, has been married. Like, this is a grown woman, and this is a high school kid.
It's an interesting side plot that is not explored
at all.
My nitpick is not really that serious. I just want to know what happened to that guy who pocketed the gun. Where's the sequel? Where's Juice 2? Juicier.
Yeah, what if he grabbed the gun and now he feels like he needs the juice?
Maybe the gun's got magical abilities. Like, he's got the juice.
Oh, the gun is the juice.
You know, the whole Elder one.
Oh.
That wraps up our nitpicks. I don't think we really have much to pick this movie apart because it was awesome.
They didn't explore too much content where you would fall into plot holes, which I think is good. It's kind of like a keep it simple, stupid. Like the storyline is very good and very simple and doesn't really leave room for plot holes. So I appreciate that.
Let's talk about some stuff about this movie. I see you have some notes about the acting.
Yeah, very impressed. Very impressed. Khalil Kain, Omar Epps, obviously Tupac. These are guys, this was really their first credit. You know, Omar Epps, I think, had a couple TV, maybe one or two, like very small TV thing when he was getting into the industry. But for this being their first time on camera, and I think it's a nod to the director as well, who was able to really get the most out of these guys. But just really, really, really impressed with the acting in this movie.
I was too. Tupac really killed it for me. He was the MVP actor for me personally. I'm not saying everyone else didn't do a good job. I think he just kind of went above and beyond expectations, especially for his age at that time. This will transition nicely into my talking point, which is the studio's influence on the movie. So this is going to also tie into the alternate ending and kind of relate to the casting.
Okay.
Ernest Dickerson, in a really great interview I watched on YouTube from this channel called Geeks of Color. And this took place as recently as last year. And Ernest was opening up about the casting process and the creative process and the battles with the studio. I touched upon earlier how Tupac got casted. He had apparently written this movie like 9 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of got the, nobody wants to go see this movie. It's too dark. It's too dismal. And then he got it in the right hands and someone's like, this should totally be a movie. Let's go shop it around.
And hip hop's coming up, late 80s, early 90s. So really hit a sweet spot there.
So he was really adamant about getting kind of like no-named actors. And the studio, one note from the studios per him was that they wanted to make it like a comedy. And he's like, no, this isn't a joke.
This is a story. Yeah.
And then two, they wanted to like kind of cast people like Malcolm Jamal Warner, like some Huxtable ass sweater wearing guy. It's just like, nah, dude, like that wouldn't be G.
That's odd.
I don't know if that was like in line with the comedy dream from the studios, but it definitely wouldn't be the iconic movie it is today if it was like a campy comedy movie with Theo Huxtable.
Absolutely not.
No shade to Theo. I love Malcolm Jamal Warner. But
yeah, but it's just.
But it just pisses me
knowing
off
what the film is.
Like it just pisses me off like how much studios just lend their hand into the creative process in like such a negative way, because the next thing we'll talk about is the alternate ending.
I think would have been a better ending personally.
Right. And so in this ending, to explain it to the listeners, Ernest Dickerson wanted Tupac's character of Bishop to parallel James Cagney's character in White Heat, just like how they foreshadowed it like a third of the way through the movie. He wanted Bishop to go out on his own terms. It plays out the same. The final scene, he gets knocked over the ledge. Q is holding on to him, and he's like, pull me up. And he's like, I'm trying. And then he hears the police sirens, and then he kind of looks at Q, and he's like, I'm not going to jail, and then lets go on purpose. And then it's just like a silent fall to his death.
And something we forgot to mention in Plot Talk is Steele's character in the hospital told everybody that it was Bishop. So there was no way out for him at this point. Right,
exactly. Whether he knew that or not, he just wanted to go out on his own terms. And an interview with Ernest, he basically said like Bishop was going to exhibit that he wasn't no punk.
Yeah.
And again, I think this would have related a lot better to that dad backstory.
Mm-hmm.
If that's true and canon to the movie of his dad having PTSD from basically being sexually assaulted in prison, I think one, Bishop would maybe fear that for his own time in prison, and he may not want to like go through that at all or have to see that, kind of go secondhand PTSD through his dad. And then two, this whole kind of idea of this movie was how much. So I learned a new phrase called machismo, which is a Spanish
word. You didn't know machismo?
Word. No.
Wow.
People these days may be familiar with the modern term of toxic masculinity, but machismo is a Latin word, and it's in Spanish culture. It's a negative word. It's not a good thing.
No.
So it's getting wrapped up in the pride of being a manly man and being a masculine guy and having so much pride that you're a man, you're a tough guy. And that's kind of like, that's the whole reason why Bishop goes down this road.
Machismo very much is like you're so wrapped up in it that you think that your standing as a man allows you to mistreat others.
Exactly.
Right. The most macho man is the king of the hill and gets to treat others however he wishes. That's the thought process.
Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of like the whole, if it's not, we're put in a bad situation, this is how we survive. I think that's the whole MO of street gangs.
Yeah. And you just deal with it the most you know how.
It's just like bad reactions. It's just popping off like a chemical reaction. Like, don't mess with me. I'm masculine. I'll kill you. It's like, don't mess with me. I'm masculine and I'll kill you. It's like, I'll shoot you. I'll shoot you.
Just escalates and escalates and escalates. Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle. So that would have kind of justified the character development, because it is a little weird that he begs for his life.
Because sociopaths don't do that.
He's like, I don't want to die. Please save me.
Yeah.
But then if it ended like that, then it would definitely kind of come full circle for Bishop's character. You would think like, oh, like, see, you got what you deserved. But if he's all wrapped up in that, that's kind of what he wanted. He would want to go out in a blaze of glory.
So do you think the studio put their hand in and basically said there needs to be a small redemption arc at the end? Like he can't be all evil?
So going back to the studio, they just kind of want like happy endings, and they're not really cool with things ending in like a dark way or sending the wrong message to the
especially
audience.
Back then. Yeah, I feel like it's maybe a little more popular now, but
it's just like that's the whole point of the story. It's like this path will lead you there, and that's why it's a good message. Teach you to not get wrapped up in that stuff. Not really like, I think they saw it as like glorifying violence, and it's like, yeah, he did go out like a badass. Yeah, in his eyes, but like in Q's eyes and our eyes,
yeah,
he went out like a sociopath. It just ruins the whole point of the creative process.
It's interesting, and this is something that I'm very big with when I watch movies. We mentioned this during when we watch Angel Heart. You know me, I kind of like maybe a little more darker, not darker films, but
I was going to say like Angel Heart is a good example, because I think when we were talking about that movie and I was looking up reviews from back in the day, people were like, I don't like this. This is dark. This is fucked up. This is not good.
Yeah. Like,
it's just like, that's the whole point. It doesn't have to always work out.
Like there's this weird thought that movies have to, like, protagonists and antagonists have to have it has to be like some zero sum game, right? There has to be a winner. There has to be a loser. And like, oh wait, not everybody can be a loser. What do you mean? That doesn't make for a good movie. And the reality is it does, because I think audience resonates with that. Like, how many times in your life are you in a situation where it's a no-win, and sometimes things just suck? Like, how often do you get the happy ending in your situations? And I'm not talking about the parlors we go to. I'm talking about...
Hey, leave my personal business out of this.
All right, sorry about that. This isn't the Thailand scene in Stealth, okay? So... That's
Dude,
a callback.
If we don't bring up Stealth and every other 4 episodes, we're not doing our jobs right.
No, friend of the show. So
shout out Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, it is interesting. I have another question for you, because something I enjoy about this film, or I enjoy about most films, but I could have let this one slide if they wanted to do it. Do you think the 90-minute runtime was capped by the studios? Because I know nowadays we're more apt to 2-hour films, but definitely early 90s, it was like, yeah, keep this thing to 90 minutes is even a long runtime for a lot of movies from that era.
100%. I mean, studio always has something to say about runtimes.
Yeah.
Except when the movie gets so big, you know, like Avengers movies, it's like, yeah, it'd be 3 hours. Like, you're going to make us hella money. We don't care. This is a quick 90-minute watch.
Yeah.
Like 90 minutes is not a long time, but like this is such a fast watch. It does not drag at all.
I wanted more. I was telling you about this before we started recording this, James, is my preference for the movie. I would have loved to have really extended out the Bishop spiraling into madness part of this film. I would have loved to see that really dragged out, you know, because it kind of took up about 35 minutes of the film. I would have loved to see 45 minutes to an hour of Bishop's development, because I thought that was the most compelling part.
And I think a little bit more character development on the front end would have lent a little bit more payoff for the viewer to kind of know Bishop's backstory and get more into his dad's backstory. And I thought about that too. Maybe the studio didn't want that to be like really focused on, because they're probably like, oh, that's like really not fun. We're talking about studios that want to make this a comedy.
Think about how good of a thriller this would have been if the entire movie was told with Bishop as the main character instead of Q. That'd be a movie.
That'd be a wild ride.
I'd watch the shit out of that.
So Juice, like we said, is like power. It's masculine pride. It's street influence. It's like, don't mess with me, I'm the alpha dog. It really reminded me of the great proverb from Gucci Mane, who talks about the sauce, which I think can be maybe like the more modern term for juice. So if you're not familiar, Gucci Mane famously said, "When I had no money, I still had sauce. But if you got no sauce, you lost. But you can also get lost in the sauce." And that's definitely what happened to Bishop. He got lost in the juice.
Big time lost in the juice. But okay, let's have a little philosophical debate on the movie. Not debate, but conversation on the movie here, because I thought what was really interesting about it being called Juice is that the juice wasn't necessarily one specific thing. It was something different to everybody, to each member of the wrecking crew. To steal, you heard him talk like at the beginning of the movie about getting girls, just becoming popular, right? He's kind of the chubby kid, the younger guy trying to get popular. So to him, the juice is some sort of recognition. And to Q, the juice is becoming a DJ and becoming successful and getting out of Harlem and achieving a dream. And to Bishop, the juice is power, right? Physical power.
Being feared or respected. Mostly feared.
And so it was really interesting how like it isn't this one key attainable thing that they're all going for. It's the juice is so different to everybody in the film, how they're each going about trying to get it. And I think that's what fractures the wrecking crew, is that they each want different things. And eventually one personality just takes it over and breaks it. So I thought it was really interesting, right? Because they're all in the same friend group. They're all in the same environment. They all kind of live a similar lifestyle. And then their desires end up driving them apart.
Well, what did that guy mean at the end when he's like, "You got the juice now"? To him, it seemed like it was like stocks and bonds. He was like, "Oh, well, Bishop went down and Q's going up in some juice stocks."
Yeah, or it's like Highlander. If you kill him, you get his juice. But no, I think at the end, I think what Q's realizing is like there is no juice.
Exactly. Like what the guy brought up. He's like, "You got the juice now." He's like, "I mean, your juice ain't my juice. Like our juices are not the same. My juice is built different. I don't know what you want me to say."
Yeah. So all in all, well done.
Let's get into what the other guys are saying about this movie. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, it has a 79% approval rating and a 90% from the audience.
Very nice.
Pretty respectable. Yeah, very nice numbers there. Metacritic, on the other hand, the Metacritic critics give this a score of a 60, and the Metacritic audience score is a 7.2. IMDb is just a flat 7.
These all make sense to me. Like the audience reviews, especially from like the Rotten Tomatoes, it's very much kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you're not going to watch this movie if you don't already like this genre, this type of movie, or Tupac. Like you're going to go into this movie wanting to like it, and you're going to be pleasantly surprised. 79 with the critics is a little surprising. I think it's a little high, higher than I would have guessed.
Oh, really? Oh, I think it's pretty much on par.
I think if it was reviewed at the time, I'd be interested to see like when those reviews came in, because at the time I could see it being not as popular just because of the early 90s gang. Like it wasn't, crime in New York City was pretty high, and people just looked down on that and didn't want to see like a good story that happened within it.
Well, I was gonna say, I think some redeeming qualities of how much of a noir film this is the comedy sprinkled about, because there is a lot of hilarious moments in this movie, genuinely not laughing at it, laughing with it. Because when the store owner breaks up the Puerto Rican gang harassing Bishop and Raheem and Q, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna shoot your pee-pee off, man," and everyone's like, "Ha ha, hilarious." And then in the background in the arcade, there's a bunch of rules that Tripp has written on the wall, and I don't know if you caught the spelling error, but it says no alcoholic drinks. Steele, when he's cooking breakfast, or he's cooking like a meal for the boys. It's like some disgusting looking bacon and eggs. Yes. And he picks up a 40 ounce and he's like, "Oh, it's almost empty." And then he takes a swig and it's revealed that it's half full. And he's taking a fat swig and he's like, He puts it down. And then the guy that's like, "All right, yeah, good to see you, Q. I'm going to rob this place." And then he brings the guns out and they're like, "Holy shit." And then he tells everyone, like, "Everyone get naked." He's like, "You especially, because you look good." And it's just like, there's a lot of comedic parts in this movie, and I don't want them to go unrecognized.
No, but I think that really works, because you're like, okay, these guys are just high school. It's supposed to be high school dudes fucking with each other, and high school dudes like this fucking with each other are funny. So it should have that aspect to it.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a 90s Harlem Superbad.
I'd watch that.
House party shenanigans, guns, weapons, yeah. Bad situations.
Final review. Fight.
So I'm going to give my sarcastic selling point. With this being such a dramatic movie, we still like to have fun here on JPI.
Yeah.
So imagine a comedy about 4 Harlem teenagers who get into family-friendly shenanigans. Just kidding.
Knowing the studio, they would have been like, you had us in the first half.
We'll get Malcolm Jamal Warner on the phone. Hit me.
I didn't go as funny. I just basically said it's an urban Crime and Punishment. If you're familiar with the old Crime and Punishment tale from Dostoevsky, it's very much the descent into crime and a guy liking crime and then just spiraling. It's a tale as old as time.
Unfortunately.
Sociopaths, unfortunately.
So, Nick, please hit me with a laughable log line, if you can make one up, and go straight into your popcorn points.
3 friends watch their other friend descend into a psycho murderer, while one friend wants to win a DJ competition. 8.5. I thought this was a solid film. For those of you who keep track with my scores, I will continue to apologize. War Games is too high. This is the better film than War Games. War Games will be modified at some point in the future.
Disclaimer. Our end of the year bash episode, we will go in and we will have a limited number of movies that we can re-rank. And it's very obvious that Nick will re-rank War Games.
I will. 8.5. I mean, this is just solidly right there. Its rewatchability is there. Like I said, the actors did great. For me, this is just a very personal thing. I would have liked a little more background insight into Bishop's character. Watch that progression happen, but that didn't necessarily detract from the movie at all for me. Story was good. I was not expecting it to turn into a thriller, a psycho thriller, which was a pleasant surprise for me. I thought this was really just going to be a tale of these kids in the urban environment and how they lived. I did not expect it. I was very pleasantly surprised. All things considered, man, just a really, really, really solid film.
Hell yeah. I love that. My laughable logline for 1992's Juice is
The Juice.
4 teenagers dabble in petty crime, which escalates quickly when one drinks too much of that juice and juices the neighborhood and his closest friends and ends up juiced himself. 8.6 popcorn points.
Very nice.
After talking about it with you, I had it at like an 8.0, pretty solid, because I was like, I kind of wish they shed more light on Bishop's backstory, and I wish they had the alternate ending. But as I was talking through it, Ernest Dickerson wanted that. He's a visionary. Like, dude can tell a story. As well as he can shoot a camera. One, a sign of the times, but at the same time, a lot of still relevant themes in this movie. Racial tension, like systemic flaws in our country, and like with the police, because Q's like, oh, like if you want us to be guilty, we're going to be guilty. It doesn't matter. There's a scene where there's like a white guy in a business suit with a suitcase walking, and the wrecking crew is walking the other way, and he kind of does the thing where he skirts to one side of the walkway, and then they kind of like go boo, and then scare him, and then he like genuinely is scared, and then they just laugh it off. So I think there's just like a lot of important cultural points just being told. It's just like, it sucks. It's like, it's still relevant today. So I think Ernest Dickerson really set out to make a movie that was a sign of the times, but also like a timeless story. Like you were saying, just like it's a urban Crime and Punishment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And with Ernest at the helm, it's going to look good. I didn't bring this up, but there's a shot where Bishop's in like a bar, and he's really like going at a arcade game by himself. And then there's a close-up shot of his eyes, and you're just like, you can just see in his eyes, like he's going mad. He's going crazy. And then he breaks the machine and like storms off, and the bar keep is like, you broke my machine. And then like Bishop's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm out.
There's a lot of small stuff we weren't able to hit in plot talk, but like his descent into psychosis essentially is just really like very small things that happen along the way, aren't worthy of talking about in the plot talk. But as you watch it, you can like, you almost feel it. It's like a tension that's building up inside of Bishop, and it's well done, man. Well done by Ernest.
I think this movie is just really good. It's really captivating. Every time I watch it, at no point am I disengaged. At no point does this movie fall out of fashion for me. Like you said about the acting, I think it's superb. I think Tupac was amazing at it. Omar Epps was great.
Everybody, just up and down.
And I've said this before, I'm just kind of like a fan of simple stories. And I like jumping in 90 minutes with this one set of characters and just seeing where the story takes me and walking away with something that I'll think about. The studio kind of capped it in certain places, but
I would have loved to see what he could have done with a couple more $1 million and 30 more minutes.
I think he definitely proved himself. This movie still stands up to me.
This is a good one. If you have not seen Juice, what are you doing? Go watch Juice.
Fucking watch Juice. It's sick. And the music is amazing. Top tier. All bangers. After you revealed your score of 8.5, I will not lie. I just didn't want my score to be lower than yours because I did bring this to the table. So now it's just
gotcha. You had to add a little bit of juice to yours.
Dude, I juiced it up. Pun intended.
Is this your version of the juice?
My juice is out juicing your juice. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Let's start heading gone. Please join us next week where we will be watching a movie that features my favorite animal. And I wonder if this movie is why it's my favorite animal.
Yeah, if you want to talk about deep meaning in movies, you're going to want to tune in next week because we got it.
This podcast got the juice.